Today I'm at a used car dealer auction and I'm going to talk to the owners Matt and Ben and ask them some questions about what happens behind the scenes to actually make this place run. So are y'all noticing anything different between the before COVID, like 2019, versus how you have to operate now? Are there any big differences that you're seeing of how buyers buy, how sellers sell, how inventory is going?
Inventory-wise, there's not a lot of new cars out there.
Right.
For sure. So the trade market's down big time.
Okay.
People may just keep their trade-ins a little longer.
Because new cars are so expensive and interest rates are so high that
a lot of people, years ago would trade in a 60,000-mile car just because they like the new car smell.
Right.
Now they'll drive it to 120 or 130,000 miles because it's still a good car. It just doesn't have the new car smell.
Right.
So why trade it when prices are so high?
Yeah, and what we're finding is people that would typically pay off their car and then immediately trade it in and get another car payment because that's what they want. They want a car payment. They're sad without that money coming out of their bank account every month.
Sure.
That they're tending not to do that because once they because inflation, everything's costs more, is that we're seeing that instead of signing up for now that $1,200 new car payment, which is what it is now, for an equivalent car of what they just had, they're just they're staying in their car longer.
Sure.
And it's making them fix their cars more.
Yeah.
And not trying to trade that thing in and I'm sure that's hurting your guys' business.
Big time. I read something the other day. The average car is $48,000, $48,500. So your car payment's $947 a month.
Crazy, yeah. And people can't afford it.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah. When the price of eggs is doubled, milk's up, gas is up, rent's up.
Yeah.
Housing, talk about housing, but people can't add. That typical car payment would probably be somewhere it would have been a $30,000 car.
Yeah.
And that typical car payment would have been somewhere around $450 to $500.
Right.
And now you're doubling it.
Sure.
And people just can't do that with the cost of everything, and they're just keeping their cars longer.
Yeah, so they're hanging on to them longer, and that affects our franchise dealers. They're not getting as many of those low mile trades. Maybe they're coming as high mile trades. Which, by the way, the franchise dealers, compared to years ago, they're selling a lot more on their front lines high mile cars that they would have never kept before.
I've seen that a lot.
Back in the day, a franchise dealer would never keep a 100,000 mile car. They'll keep a 140, 150, 160,000 mile car, as long as it's a nice car. And cars do last longer these days, of course, but they've had to change the whole dynamic of their business as well.
And I've seen a lot of those cars show up at auction that still have these franchise dealer stickers on them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they come here. I
saw one yesterday. It was like a 2005 or 2006 Highlander. It had 160-something thousand miles, and they were trying to sell it for like $9,500 on a lot. It ended up here, obviously, because they're not going to sell that car on there a lot. They're just trying to get somebody in then, obviously. But we're seeing that a lot more, and that's hurting us smaller used car dealers because, in 2019, that same car, I could have bought that thing for probably $2,500
Sure.
and sold it for $3,500, but it went through the auction. I watched it last week. It brought $5,000.
Yeah, by the time you do recon and all that stuff and try to get it on your front line in your new car store,
that's the thing.
It's a headache for those guys.
And if I take that as a used car store, because a customer's not going to pay me as much as they're going to go to a new franchise with their couches and that kind of customer is not coming to me to buy that $10,000 Highlander. If I'm going to sell that same car on my lot, I've got to be half that. I've got to be $5,000 to even get somebody to come to my lot to look at it. So it's just amazing the discrepancy of what these franchise dealers can get for these cars and why they're keeping them. But when they're keeping them, they're crushing us.
Sure.
So as the small used car dealers, and I'm assuming that's hurting your guys' business immensely too.
It's changed it. The quality of the cars has definitely come down, not for us, but for you, the buyer as well. The car that you buy for $2,500 right now,
it used to be $800.
That's I was going to say $1,000, $1,200. So half. And then, that all rolls downhill to your customer.
Right.
So the difference between getting an average $5,000 car now would have been a really nice $5,000 car 4 or 5 years ago.
And we've seen it in the data. The average used car price has gone up by 40%.
Yes.
So we're seeing that right here, that where a car that I could buy for $1,000 is now $2,000.
Right.
A car I could buy for $2,000 is now $4,000.
Right. Yep.
And then we pass the savings on to the customer because, we have to. Obviously, we got to eat.
Yeah.
So whenever that happens, like my sweet spot used to be I would sell cars for $2,500, right?
Right.
And now our sweet spot is $1,000 more than that. We have to be at $3,500 bucks, and it just it hurts. It hurts every level because it's hurting consumers. It's hurting us used car dealers because, especially the ones that are using leverage. Like, I don't use a floor plan. I pay cash for everything. You guys know that.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
But these guys that are on floor plan, they're actually having to take more risk because if they want to keep the same amount of cars on their lot, if they had $50,000, $100,000 worth of a floor plan, now that $100,000 floor plan, they're having to pay $180,000. That's what their exposure is for the same amount of vehicles. Mm-hmm. That just leads me into the next thought. I don't know if you guys can talk about this or not, but what kind of issues do you run into with floor plans? You don't have to say any companies or anything like that, or I would imagine it's not issues with the floor plan, it's with the floor plan holders.
Yeah.
Sure, there's always some dealers that are better with floor plans than others, and sometimes, and this isn't always necessarily true, but you can measure how somebody's business is going if their floor plan is maxed out quite a bit in the bad months of the year. And the floor plan companies have this all figured out. They do this every day.
Right. They've
got a matrix, and that's kind of how they extend their credit. And I would say it's kind of just like the same. It's kind of like a consumer with your credit score. These guys that are always, redlining their floor plans probably aren't doing as well as the guy that has a $500,000 floor plan that keeps $10,000 on it just to keep it active.
So are y'all able to know kind of the levels? Do the floor plan companies call you and say, okay, this dude, well, we probably need to cap him. You need to let him know that he can only buy X amount of cars. What's the dialogue that you have either with the floor plan companies or the actual dealers that come in here that are in those situations?
Well, we basically get an availability report from the different floor plans. So, you can kind of take a look at it. But I would say the buyers who have floor plans kind of monitor that much more closely than we do.
I'm assuming they're, because dealers overall, they're bad with money, right? So you don't have to say it. Dealers are bad with money. But I would assume there's been some situations where kind of like a last call that you have to cut some of these dealers off, I would assume, or either the floor plan companies are cutting them off, but they have to let you guys know that because this bidder that might not be the best with their financial situation and doesn't pay attention to it wants to come in and just buy everything.
Yes,
that happens a lot.
Right, that happens a lot.
That happens a lot, or they got to pay something off, or it's going to take a couple of days to pay something off. But to your point, with everything changing here with 40% higher, tax time came. We had COVID that were craziest prices we've ever seen in the industry, and then you got tax time that hit on top of it. Well, that's getting ready to start happening where August is the big months for all these floor plans where you got to pay the car off.
Right. That's where we're seeing right now that a lot of these guys paid these crazy amounts of money for these cars, and now money's all dried up. But this happens every year.
Happens every year.
Why are dealers, why are we so stupid where we don't know that? It seems like I talk to the same guys every year, and they're like, well, we were selling cars, and it was all good, and then I don't know what happened. Well, it's tax time, dude. It happens every year. We prepare for it. You buy cars when they're cheap, and then you don't buy cars when they're expensive. But these dealers do not know, and it's like it sneaks up on them every year. And I want to hear somebody else that can see it, because you guys know the seasonality of cars.
Oh, for sure.
Why do car dealers not get it?
I think some dealers leverage floor plans and use floor plans different than other dealers. Some people, for instance, just before tax time, they may not use that floor plan all year, but they leverage somebody else's money to stock their lot up because they know they're going to do so well in 30 days from today.
Right.
And
we do that, but we do it with cash. Sure. But why don't, it seems like the overall spectrum of dealers, this is not the MO of most dealers. They're not going this route right here. They're being so reactionary. Why, from a logically sound person, why are they doing this?
Well, we happen to have the best buyers in the world.
Yeah.
For sure. For sure.
Fact.
But I think it's just like anybody. It's just like the racing industry. They say if you want to be a millionaire, start with 3.
Right.
And you'll end up with 1.
Yeah.
A lot of people get in the car business. They don't realize what you guys have to go through. Your shop bills.
Sure.
You might have $50,000 in the shop for the month. You might have $30,000. One of our big guys, he's $35,000 a month. In the shop. And you got people, and you got all the recon, and it's easy to say, well, I only made $1,500 on this car. But there's a lot that goes behind that $1,500.
Yeah, but you might have made $3 off that $1,500 after it's said and done. Yeah,
exactly, and that's what a lot of people don't see and they don't understand.
I'm curious too with the way that prices spiked and how easy it was for dealers to make money in the last few years. You would know better than I do, but I've seen the data where there've been a lot of dealers like created in these last few years. Have you seen a big uptick in buyers where you've had new registrations for coming into to your auction or whatever over the last when times were great?
For us, we had a lot of growth.
Right.
We're in the Raleigh area. We're in the Asheville area.
At the end of COVID, we had a lot of growth.
Yeah.
Through the beginning of COVID, it was a little bit of a struggle for a while. But toward the end of the COVID, it spun off into adding some new auctions, some mobile sites, which is working out really, really well for us.
Right.
But through the beginning of COVID, it was tough.
So how many sales do you guys have right now? I think I know of 4.
We've got Raleigh,
right?
Asheville,
Yep.
New Bern,
yep,
in here.
So you got 4 total. How many did you have before COVID?
We didn't have Raleigh or Asheville.
Okay.
Right.
So you basically almost doubled your business since COVID. And did y'all have to hire extra people for that, or was it all just kind of organic bootstrap kind of thing?
We've added staff.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Here at the end of when we added the sales, we had to add staff.
Is that scary knowing that you have to add staff before you actually go into that venture? This is more small business.
Everything in a small business is always scary.
For sure.
Always, as you know. It's there's no book on how to do things the right way, and we failed more times than we've been successful in a lot of different ways, but we learn from it every time.
You learn more from your failures than you do successes, right?
Every time.
So whenever you're going into these auctions, especially these mobile auctions, so for those of you that don't know what a mobile auction is, what it is basically you go to the franchise dealer and they park their trade-ins behind their car, and then they're hands off. This is genius. I don't know why every franchise dealer doesn't do this. I think this is the most brilliant thing that's come to the auction. You know, the auction industry is so back down, like we're decades behind. You walk into here and it's like you're walking into the 1980s. This is how everything's been done for 50 years, right?
For years and years and years.
And the used car industry, the dealers, they don't want to change because most of them are not my age. They're 60 years old.
They're older.
And I mean, let's put it, they don't want technology, they don't want to change.
No.
But what you're doing with a franchise dealer, they are open to change. They're open to this technology. They might be stuck in their ways as far as how they sell cars or whatever, but this is easier for them. So from your clients that you actually do go and do this mobile thing with, they have to be over the moon with the system that you guys bring to them.
They seem to be pretty happy.
Do they not talk to other franchise? I don't understand why you don't have 20 locations.
We get phone calls, but it takes a lot of work.
It takes a lot of work.
It takes a lot of work to do it.
And you got to have cars too, because if it's one location, how many cars does the typical single franchise location bring in a month? I know it's hard to say because their budget's different, but if you had a ballpark.
Well, our mobile sales, we combine several dealerships. So we like to have somewhere between 100 and 125 cars. That's the number that works for us.
And on a sale at Raleigh, what you do, you typically have between 60 to 100 cars when you do that mobile from the run list that I've seen.
Yeah, last time we had 126.
How many dealerships?
The run list you see, there's usually quite a bit more added just before the sale.
So how many dealerships do you have servicing that?
That would be 3 stores.
3 stores. Mm-hmm. So the typical dealership in that area, whatever, is going to bring in 40 cars per month.
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah, that's about right.
So that's why it's a monthly thing.
It's bi-weekly.
So every 2 weeks, so that's better than that. So it's probably closer to 80 cars.
Yeah, but to get back to your original question of why we don't do this for 20 different franchise dealers, we believe there's a point where you can outgrow your britches, and then everything falls apart. We're a small auction company, as auction companies exist,
right,
in the corporate world. But for a mobile auction company with a fixed site location, we're pretty big for what we do. We right now we're selling right around 1,000 cars a month, and we all make a good living, and our customers seem to be very happy. The buyers, the sellers, we know everybody by name. We can break down in a small town and probably make a phone call and have a bed to sleep in if Matt needs one. And he travels a lot.
It probably brings me to this next question then. Sound like you're content in your business.
Sure.
How do you reach that point? This is now we're getting past used cars. We're getting past the small business. Now we're getting into the actual philosophy behind this. Then, as far as the business goes,
we don't know how it happened, but it's all about maintenance. I mean, we kind of have the same philosophy on keeping everything low and doing everything the right way and not having to stress about everything every day like most businesses with floor plans and that kind of stuff. We don't have a floor plan.
Right.
But the big thing is, my job, besides being the Yelp guy, is I'm on the road. I've known these guys for years and years and years. I go into your place, shake your hand. I try to see 35, 40 dealers a day when I'm on the road.
Right.
And then Ben comes in. He's personable, knows everybody. These guys, everybody becomes our friend. So there becomes a point where we can get too big, too stretched out.
And you can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
It's not effective anymore.
We found that in our business where, we used to be small, and I could literally touch every car. I could touch every customer, shake every customer's hand, and now I don't even see the customers. I don't talk to the customers unless I'm just in the shop or whatever, and we've lost a lot of that personal touch, and it seems like you're at that area where you don't want to lose that, and that's very commendable because you're not going to lose buyers. You're not going to lose me ever. No matter what happens in this auction, you're not going to lose a buyer like me because, I'm sitting here talking to you and able to ask you this question.
Sure.
And do you have that same kind of dynamic, that same kind of relationship with your sellers also?
Absolutely. The franchise store who gave us our very first opportunity 13 or 14 years ago, whatever that was, they're still our customer to this day. They're probably one of our top 3 customers, and I'm sure they will be as long as we keep doing this. But, the way we grew, we sold, I think, 45 cars our very first month. And then 2 or 3 years into this, we used to dream about what if we ever got to 400 cars a month, 100 cars a week. We used to dream about that, and then all of a sudden,
you didn't think about the operational stuff.
You just don't realize what comes with it. And then all of a sudden, I call Matt and say, "Hey, Matt, did you know we sold 1,000 cars last month?" He's like, "No, I have no idea." It just happens. It is what it is.
So did you ever have? Me and my wife, we run our business to where it is right now, and one thing I think I regret a little bit is we never had these like landmarks where we celebrate. We used to celebrate when we were small, like the selling of a car. When I'd sell one car, we'd sell a couple a week. Yeah. So that night that I'd sell a car for, where I go pick up steaks and bring them home. Yeah. Or I always had like these stupid suckers that I liked in my drawer that if I'd sell a car, I called her victory sucker, something stupid like that. Did y'all ever have any kind of these like just silly milestones that you hit that you would actually celebrate?
I think it was actually the years in business. Yeah. 10 years was a really big deal for us.
That's huge for any business.
For small businesses, 85% of small businesses don't make it 2 years.
Right.
So if you can make it 2 years and you've got a small business, the struggle's not over, but you've done something. You can make it 2 years.
Now, were y'all always profitable?
We didn't make a lot of money at the beginning, that's for sure. And we got a little bit of the the trash of the car business that took advantage of us when we were really small, and we needed the customers. So we probably took some dealers, buyers and sellers we shouldn't have in desperation to get where we are now. Now
we took everybody. Now you can be a little more selective.
Yeah.
So
now
hindsight, would you still taken that route because it helped you actually grow your business because you had cars there?
No, we still give everybody a chance. You know what? You're trying to do the same thing we're doing.
Right.
Stay in business for 20 years.
Right.
So we give everybody a chance. You just got to learn to not take advantage of situations.
Well, you don't want to crush relationships at any point.
No. We've got a thing that we talk about quite a bit. Is we call it the cost of doing the right thing, and I guess people can call it whatever they want. It costs us a lot of money to do the right thing sometimes.
Oh, absolutely.
No fault of our own, no fault of the franchise dealers, no fault of the sellers. But sometimes there's just a point where we have to suck it up because it's the right thing to do, and we're kind of the middleman, and we do it a lot. And the cost for us to do the right thing every month is a pretty substantial number, but we always do the right thing, and I think that's why we've made it.
So I would assume that these situations arise where I go out into your auction lot and I see the sellers. I see who's selling these cars. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I see UMA on it, which is United Mobile Auctions. Mm-hmm. Are usually those the situations where you're kind of eating whatever you have to eat because the buyer says something's wrong with the car and the seller said, well, there's nothing wrong with that car, so you kind of got to just say, you know what, I like this buyer, I like the seller.
Not always, but yes.
And so, you know what, seller, buyer, you don't have to take it, seller,
we'll take it.
We'll take it.
And we'll figure it out.
Yep. And it's a double-edged sword.
So dealers are obviously the most upstanding citizens of any kind of profession you can deal with, and the most pleasant of people too.
Yeah.
Sarcasm. So it's rare for me to be able to go to auction. We go to a lot of auctions.
Yeah.
And it's rare for me not to see a dealer outside on his phone yelling at somebody, or to see a dealer in the office irate about something or another. How often do those situations? It's much less here, obviously, because you're a small auction and you get to know these people, so they're not going to take it out on you as much as they would just some random office staff.
Not often, but everybody has a bad day.
Yeah.
Even Maddie, every once in a while.
Every once in a while.
Hardly ever, but sometimes.
What are the most contended things that you have to deal with? I would assume it'd be arbitration, but I don't.
Arbitration's a tough one, and
which arbitration, for those of you that don't know, is when there's a guarantee here at this auction where if you buy a car that has a ride and drive and it's over a certain amount and it's under a certain amount of miles, they actually guarantee the motor and the transmission, drivetrain on these vehicles. So if a buyer buys one of these cars that fall into the situation, they drive it after the auction and something's not right, transmission's not right or whatever, they can do what's called an arbitration and they can actually get out of the sale because that transmission should have been guaranteed to them. So
I've got a great example of one of the cars. It's an arbitration policy, and it's a particular brand that has a CVT transmission, and we don't arbitrate that car ever.
Right.
If it's a CVT in that brand of that car, it's as is. It's one of those things that you can't tell if they're bad or good. So you take it to 3 different mechanics, and they say this is how it's supposed to shift, and you take it to, 4 other mechanics down on the other side of the street. They say, no, this is not right, and nobody can agree on what's right or what's wrong. It's a different type of transmission. It doesn't shift like a normal car. So we've taken it out of the mix. And if it's a CVT transmission, check it before the sale. If you think it's good, then you buy the car. If you don't believe it's good, then don't buy the car.
That's one thing you aren't covering because it just takes too much legwork. And you announce it before every auction. Yeah. Like I don't buy these typically these cars that have the guarantee because I don't spend as much money on our vehicles, so we don't hit that threshold. Yeah. But even I know that CVT transmission, I'm not buying it. Yeah. But I'm guessing that.
And there's a lot of CVT transmissions that are good,
right? That
they have no problems with,
But you have these dealers that aren't listening to these announcements beforehand. They don't see that big sign up there that says, okay, we're not covering CVT transmission. We're not covering diesel motors.
Right.
And they want to arbitrate that after the fact, correct?
Sure. Exactly.
Yeah.
But we use a second hand, too. A lot of times if there's a difference between the arbitration, we'll take it back to the mechanic, let them check them. And a lot of times we'll call the dealer and say, hey, we're not sure it was doing it this time. We don't know if it's doing it this time. So we use second hand if we can.
And that's where we go to work. We try to get these cars sold regardless. Maybe it's for a little less money. Sometimes our dealers will actually allow the buyers to actually take the car with them, have the car checked. And in some cases, they call back and say, you know what, there's nothing wrong with it. In some cases, they say, hey, this has got whatever may be the issue in the car. And they say, but maybe for $500 off, we can keep the car. And
that's where you go to work, right?
Back to the beginning. We want the car to be sold.
Right.
We only get paid when we sell the car.
Right.
So we want every car to be sold. So we work on both sides.
So what's the limit then? So, like I've seen your buyer fees. So I'm assuming on every car, you probably average between $350, $450 for every car that's sold. What you're actually bringing in, that's gross. So it's not factoring in all your. So what is the limit as far as how much work Ben will do to get this sale done?
I don't think there is a limit. We
try to wash out, and if it's a bad deal, just to make everybody happy, we try to wash out.
Yeah, we beat a dead horse until we know it's dead. If there's nothing left, we stop. I mean, we won't make 5 phone calls of the same deal over $200.
Right.
At some point, it's just this is it. This is what we'll do. This is what we won't do. For example, our sales are on Thursday here at this location. Right. We sell typically a half dozen cars the following day on Friday on phone calls. Yeah. People come back, they look at the cars, they figure out what's wrong with it. They need that car. They've got a customer for it. So we don't stop working to get the car sold. That's just what we do. That's our job.
What are your biggest struggles right now that you're having to deal with?
Convincing everybody that it's not COVID pricing. Letting them realize that the market's falling at a pretty drastic level,
and that's more on the seller side.
Sure. Yeah. Besides that, besides that honeypot of the 25,000 under stuff, 25,000, 10,000, convincing them that for instance, junk during COVID was going from $800 to $1,200 a car, basically.
Right.
Stuff that we were going to crush.
Yeah, we were going to crush it, and people were paying $800, $1,200 for it. That same car today, I talked to a guy this morning. He wants to give me $200 a car.
Right.
Right.
I mean, that's
I mean, that's a huge spread. That's a huge difference.
It's a big gap on a little money.
So how long is it going to take for these? Because you're talking seller side. You're talking sellers need to realize they need to wake up that, okay.
Sellers see it. They talk about it every day.
Good.
And,
okay.
and I think
we're just not seeing it in the numbers yet.
Right. We're just not seeing it yet, but they're talking about it every day. They talk about it in the office. They talk about it in their meetings that they've got the COVID crazy pricing is going away, and how long it takes them to adjust to that, it's happening. I would say for us, it's getting back to the adjustment that we're getting back to the seasons. We're going to have a summer season. We're going to have a lull in October, November. Most likely tax time will be busy like it's always been. So I think just getting used to, you can't be heroes every single week.
So as a small business, being in a business cycle that has, or in a business that has seasonality like this, we're in the same business, the same seasonality. Sure. How do you prepare for seasonality in your business?
I mean, we pretty much know what's coming.
Right.
So
nothing changes for us.
Yeah,
we get a list every single beginning of the week of how many cars the dealers want us to pick up.
Right.
We pick every single one up. We swing the bat at every single car. We try to get every single car sold. And still, even though the market's changing, we're still selling 90 to 95% of the franchise cars.
Right.
We have a little bit of a problem with the consignment cars. They're a little tougher to sell. So.
But you've always had that problem,
always,
right?
Yeah,
because independent dealers think their stuff is worth way more, or they're just so deep into it that they can't.
For whatever reason.
Yeah,
there's 10 different reasons why they don't sell well, but we struggle with consignment cars and we do really, really well with franchise cars, and it hasn't really changed. The one thing that has changed for us is we can't really give the franchise dealers a high five on every car. Like, you guys did really well on this car. You did really well on this car. We have to tell them, hey, we didn't do well on this car.
Right.
And here's why we think we didn't do well. And they have to make a decision, or we make a decision together on how to get the car sold. But for us, our business model doesn't change. We take everything we can get, and we just do our best to sell every single car.
We really can't. You're depending on new car trades.
Right.
So do you know, as far as exactly how many cars you have to sell in a particular auction to be profitable in that auction?
We do.
You do?
Yeah.
Good.
Yep.
Good. Another thing, you talk about consignments. So what I've noticed is there's more consignments now than there have been over the last 12 months. And I take that as a sign of the general overall health of the used car market. Is the more consignments, the more independent dealers you see dumping cars at auction, the worse off the used car market probably is.
Sure.
Do you feel like that's an accurate representation when you're seeing a lot more of these consignments come in, that these dealers, somebody might be in trouble?
Well, I would say yes, and I would agree with that from the outside looking in, that, hey, these guys need the money, so they're bringing us these cars. But the problem is, if they don't sell them, maybe they don't need the money. Because if they sit out there week after week and they're not sold, then maybe they're not in trouble. Maybe there's an issue. I'm not sure what it is. But sometimes a lot of these guys are like, oh, these guys are bringing all these cars for a fire sale. They got to have the cash.
Right.
But if they didn't sell them, maybe they don't need the cash. It's tough to say.
So unless they're just so over leveraged in their floor plan that, you know what, they don't have the money to begin with. So if this car doesn't bring $5,000, it only brings $3,000, they got to come up with the difference of the $2,000, and they don't have it. So they got to hold on to it, right?
Right.
A lot of the consignments we're seeing now, though, are not floor plan cars.
They're not floor plan cars. Okay.
I mean, in your opinion, what do you think that are actually floor plan cars? I don't see a lot of them. I think they're all.
The floor plan companies call us and ask us if the vehicle that they're selling is on floor plan. The floor plan companies will actually call us or email us and ask us to actually go touch the car and make sure the car's here. It's their collateral.
Right.
So we do get those cars, but I would agree with Matt. Most of those, I would say less than 10% of the 50 consignments out there are cars that are on floor plan.
Now, when we started at this location, it was a lot more than that.
Right.
Sure.
They'd call every day, and they'd have to talk to them, and but it doesn't seem to be that case.
So what year did you guys start?
2010.
2010.
Oh, this location?
It was 11.
Yeah, 2011.
So economy was still bad at that point. So I'm sure there's a lot of floor plan problems.
Sure.
On it. So what I am seeing at these bigger auctions is that floor plan companies are actually running cars. And I've got a few floor plan reps that I talk to kind of get the inside scoop. Yeah. And they're actually repoing these cars from independent dealers.
It's happening.
Do you ever deal with that situation? I don't know if you run cars for floor plan companies here. I've never seen a floor plan company name out there on one of the cars, but maybe I missed it.
Yeah.
We do. We run for a couple different ones.
All right.
Not a whole lot recently, but yeah, we have in the
probably don't
past.
see it more often now.
Yeah.
I would assume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody was living high there for a while.
Right.
And we hear the stories. We don't always necessarily see it, but just like you, we hear the stories from the reps and which company you probably don't want to work with them. They're in a little bit of trouble. They kind of kick the can down the road to us and give us a heads up on some of this stuff. But yeah, we've actually had our trucks go and pick up cars for floor plans several times.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
we were the repo companies.
So because they bought the car here, and they're like, well, we're not going to pay you for it. So the floor plan company like, we're not going to pay you for it because they don't have the available credit.
They bought them everywhere, but we just went to their location, and the floor plan guy that runs it was sitting there with the keys and handed us the keys.
Because they're like, this is your car because you're not getting paid for it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Wow.
Yeah. So they collect them. They collect them before it all goes apart, and then we try to sell them for them.
And I know you explained it to probably most people that maybe they do, maybe they don't understand what a floor plan is, but a floor plan is nothing more than a credit card for cars.
Yep.
So those cars really if it's on a floor plan, it's not owned by that dealer, it's owned by the floor plan company. And if you can't make the payment per month or your curtailment payment, maybe that's paid. They're all set up different, but
and curtailment payment is just basically their minimum interest payment that they have to make to keep them current.
Sometimes
typically a percentage of the vehicle.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. So maybe they can't make that payment, and the floor plan company says, "Hey, what's going on here?" And then they've got 10 or 12 of those, and they can't make it. Sometimes they go pick the cars up because
then the floor plan company what they've told me is we help them sell their cars by taking it to auction.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I got a question for both of you. What is your favorite part of this business? Ben, you go first.
Ooh, I would say definitely during the auction, not for the reason most people think. During the actual sale, the hour and a half it takes us to do the auction is like an hour and a half break for us from the rest of the week. The rest of the week, it's so much paperwork and the phone calls and chasing titles. But during the actual auction,
turn your mind off.
Yeah, during the actual auction, for the hour and a half we do the auction, that's my favorite part. And it's entertaining. You get to see everybody and just not on the phone all week. So I would say definitely during the auction is probably my favorite time. It's the most relaxing time of the week.
What I love to see is that every week that I come here, you're just driving cars.
Yeah.
Like you're doing the thing that your probably lowest level employee is doing. So you're just in the trenches I
just go out there and drive cars. That's nice.
Thing. Yeah, so that's great to see from a business owner that I do the same thing. I'll clean toilet. I'll do whatever we need to do at the shop, and it's just nice to see. That's why you're successful, right? Because you guys are doing all the stuff.
We do it all.
We don't ask anybody to do anything we wouldn't do.
Right. So what's your favorite thing to do?
My favorite thing to do is, it's always been my dream to be around everybody like this and pretty much control the atmosphere for the most part, as much as you can.
Right.
But, going out and seeing everybody, getting invited to their family functions and all that kind of stuff for years and years, that's who I like to be.
That's small business.
Yep.
You want to be connected to your customers, to the networking is what you like.
Anybody and everybody, yep.
I love it.
So
I love it.
Everybody gets an opportunity here, and that's the big thing that, anybody and everybody, we'll take them all. And if we don't have it, floor plan companies, any of this, you're all invited.
Right.
And we all work together, and that's the only way this thing works.
It doesn't really feel right here today without all the people. It's so quiet here.
Yeah.
This makes no sense. It's never like this here.
Yeah. That's the thing. When I came to auction 11 years ago, the first time I went with my grandfather, actually probably 12 years ago, the first time I went to auction, just fell in love with the atmosphere. And it really hasn't changed all that much from then. You've added the computers and stuff, but really the atmosphere is the same thing. And you get your adrenaline pumping, and I know you've got to in the lane when you're yelling.
Big time. And it's always a little stressful sometimes, or some people will miss a car, or they'll get mad at you for missing them, or so it's all hugging the babies, making sure everybody's happy at the end of the day.
After the auction's done, like even guys I'm friends with that here, we're bid against each other, and we're mortal enemies, right? While we're in the lane, but at the end of the auction, we're fist bumping and high five and say, "I'll see you next week," whatever. That's the thing I do like about auctions. Say what you will about car dealers, they are what they are, but there's still some.
A lot more of the dealers are really, really good guys than the bad guys. Truly.
Right, and I would completely agree with that. Yeah. There's a select few dealers that give all of us dealers
For sure.
a horrible name. But
for sure.
Anyway, thank you guys for letting me come in and ask you a few questions.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
United Mobile Auctions. So any of you dealers that are in the North Carolina, South Carolina area, they have 4 auctions. I'll put a link to their website in the description below. Dealers only. They're dealers only auctions.
Dealers only.
Not
Dealers
public.
only is the most important part of that conversation.
And franchise dealers. They have a good system set up with mobile. I don't understand why every franchise dealer doesn't go to these guys and do the mobile auction ways. They would take the stress out of your hands. So
come see us. Watch our website. We'll probably announce one more big sale coming soon.
Good. So look for that and check out their website and like, subscribe, and thank you guys for having me on the show.
Thank you.
Good day.